Welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 5, and today we're taking a look at the 2023 McLaren Artura. Now this has been in production since 2022 and it's the second ever hybrid after the P1 that McLaren have made, but it's also the first ever V6 production vehicle that they have done. It's got an all-new 8-speed dual clutch transmission to help deal with all the power. The electric part of this car can go for 19 miles and only adds around 287 pounds to the overall weight of the vehicle, which is not all that much when you consider the size of the battery, the electric motor and all the stuff in between. And the electric motor itself also not only provides extra power and torque, but it also replaces the reverse gear in the gearbox. So yeah, you only own electric when you are reversing, which does throw up a little bit of a question to me, because obviously this is a plug-in hybrid as far as I'm aware. So what happens if you've got no electric power and you want to go in reverse? Does the car charge it up? Does it have any regen on it? Anything like that? I'm not sure. So that's something that I've not been able to find out a question about, but because of the extra weight in terms of the batteries and the electric motor, they have had to find other ways of lightening this car. So it's got an all-new carbon fibre chassis, and the engine itself is an all-aluminium engine in terms of the material being used. So yeah, that means that even though it weighs 3,384 pounds, it's not that much heavier than other similar vehicles from McLaren that have had the larger 3.8 or 4 litre twin turbocharged V8. So that is quite impressive, to be honest. And yeah, it's got the usual kind of practicality on the go for McLaren. So you've got a frunk, and you've got the I think they're called dihedral doors. So yeah, I've never seen the point of these doors, to be honest, especially on a car that is being marketed as something that is more usable on a day-to-day basis. Just doesn't seem all that practical to me. Seemingly only be there to show off, which you need to do, because this looks like pretty much every other McLaren that we've seen so far, which is in that it's not offensively ugly or anything like that, but it is sort of just blends into the background. To be honest, to me it doesn't stick out enough in terms of the way it looks, which means yeah, it's not going to offend anybody, but neither is it going to really impress all that many people either, especially in comparison to the likes of what Ferrari or Lamborghini are doing. Interior wise, it's nice and simple and plain. You've got a reasonable sized screen, but nothing that's massive and overbearing, so that's all good. And the seats look comfy enough and look like provide plenty of support. Looks like there's a rear shelf in there as well for a little bit of a additional storage. Now unfortunately, like Porsche, McLaren seem to be, in their infinite wisdom, seem to think that even though you've bought the car, you're not allowed to really look at the engine, so we can't actually look at the engine. But it is a 3 litre twin turbocharged V6, which is coupled with an electric motor that has 7.4 kilowatt hour of batteries, and all in total that produces 670 horsepower and 531 pounds-feet of torque, all going through the rear wheels through that all new 8-speed gearbox that I talked about earlier. So yeah, plenty of power. Easily one of the most powerful McLarens that have been put out there, especially in terms of the ones that are more are not limited production, because obviously the likes of the Senna and the 720S, they are a little bit more limited production, but they have around the same power as this. In fact, I think the 720S has only about 40 horsepower more, but this is obviously going to be more economical. You're going to have the electric power to be quiet around in, and yeah, it's obviously going to be a lot cheaper to run on a day-to-day basis. Not that you probably are thinking of such a thing when buying a car as expensive as this. So yeah, overall it's everything that you'd expect from McLaren. It's practical, it's well made, it's not offensively ugly, it's got plenty of power and torque, it's got a lot of engineering in it, but does it excite? But to find that out, let's go out to the open road and see what this car can do. Right, so here we are at the drag strip. So McLarens aren't always about acceleration or top speed, but they certainly always have plenty of it on the go. So let's see what it can do before we hit the speed camera on this drag strip, and then we'll get it around the track. So yeah, it's got a good amount of torque and horsepower, even in just the standard engine without the electric power. So it's more than capable of getting off the line quickly, and yeah, is no slouch once it gets going. So 161 miles an hour there, that is really rather quite impressive, to be honest. especially given the quite small engine in comparison to the other McLarens that we've had on this game. You know, like I said, usually they have a 3.8 or a 4 litre V8, which granted isn't a massive V8 or anything like that, but obviously it is 2 extra cylinders and a lot more in the way of cubic capacity, but still. At the end of the day, they've done really a good job with getting as much power as they can out of the engine as possible. And yeah, the electric power there is just bumping that up ever so much to compete with their other more powerful cars. So yeah, rivals, we're in high-end S1 class, which is pretty much the case for most McLarens, I believe. And yeah, those are the stats. So the braking, the launch, and the acceleration and speed are all excellent. Handling is a little bit on the weaker side of things, and then you'll see that in comparison to the other cars that we've got here from McLaren. So if you compare it to the GT, for instance, weighs the exact same as the GT, but has more power and more torque. But the GT, as you can see, is slightly better in terms of handling. But everything else is weak. For some reason the launch on the GT is absolutely awful. Then you got the 720S, which, as you can see, this is nearly as good as in terms of acceleration, but that just has so much more going for it because it is obviously a more higher price hypercar, while weighing a good 200 or so pounds less. But you compare it to the likes of the 600 LT, again that does weigh a substantial amount less, but as you can see the launch and the acceleration aren't any better. And finally, you compare it to the likes of the 650S Coupe or even the 570S. As you can see, they're both also less powerful with less torque, but also weigh less as well. So, but as you can see, there's not a massive amount of extra weight on this car in comparison to those other vehicles from McLaren, which, when you consider all of the electric gubbings it's got going on, is fairly impressive. And obviously a lot of that has come down to the other weight saving measures that they've put into the car. But nonetheless, let's get this car out to the track, see what it sounds like, and then we'll talk about it some more. Yeah, the engine sounds fairly good. McLaren engines haven't typically been, in terms of sound, been the best part of the car, but this one does at least sound a bit different, being a V6, and yeah, therefore is a little bit more unique in comparison to a lot of other supercars like this. Speed and acceleration is also pretty damn great. 0 to 60 is dealt with in only 2.6 seconds. 0 to 100 is dealt with in 5.487 seconds. And it going to a top speed of 205 miles an hour, although in this game you could stretch that up to at least 224 miles an hour thereabouts. So yeah, that is a fairly impressive amount of speed, and yeah, really rather good acceleration times, again considering how small the engine is in comparison to other vehicles out there that are in the same kind of class. Handling wise, well, you can definitely feel that extra couple £100 or so, as much as McLaren has tried to disguise that with the all new carbon fibre chassis, the all aluminium engine, and the fact it's not got a reverse gear, which obviously would save weight on how heavy the gearbox is. It's, yeah, still is noticeable. It's obviously not as bad as it would have been if they just hadn't bothered with any of that. You know, they could have easily just taken a 570S, changed the look slightly on the outside, and just shoved some hybrid system inside of it, and therefore it would have weighed even more. But yeah, they have done a good enough job to disguise it in some regards, but it's nowhere near as sharp as other vehicles from McLaren. The 600 LT and the 650S in particular are much better handling cars, despite the fact that they have less in the way of power. So yeah, has plenty of power on the go in comparison to other vehicles from McLaren, but the handling has been slightly compromised due to the hybrid system that it's got going on. But on the whole, it's perfectly fine. It's everything that you'd expect from McLaren. like I said, it's not offensively ugly. It's got plenty of power and torque, really good acceleration, good top speed. The handling is mostly solid, and yeah, it's going to be a practical car to deal with on a day-to-day basis, even more so now that you can trundle around on electric power for a good few miles and not disturb anyone and not get into trouble with, you know, congestion charges or anything like that. So yeah, it's perfectly reasonable as far as supercars go, but it's not one that excites me, unfortunately, unlike other cars from the likes of Italy or elsewhere. Nonetheless, though, you can get this car in the current festival playlist for only 20 points. It is still well worth getting because it is, at the end of the day, a brand new car to the Forza series. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.